All right, name of the Father, Son, the Holy Spirit, one God, amen. So today I wanted to talk about this topic. I'm there's some work we're doing in the diocese about this topic, why are youth leaving the church? And youth, really, we're talking more about GYP, kind of in their 20s and 30s. And I'm sure you know and have seen this pattern in your own churches, in your own lives. You know people who just kind of start coming less and less and less, and then they stop coming altogether. Maybe they get married, they stop, or whatever. And we want to think about why it is that's happening, right? And I'm sure all of you know somebody or in this situation. And so there's a couple of reasons that come to mind. The first one is they don't see Christ in the people at church, right? And now there's two reasons for that. And the first reason is okay. People are sinners, and that's normal, right? So, we go to church and we see that people are sinful and they're bad and they're judgmental and they're all of these things. And we're like, okay, well, that's really bad, but that's okay because I'm kind of judgmental and I'm a sinner and I'm broken and I'm greedy and all those things as well. I heard a very nice example the other day. Someone said, if I go to a concert and someone's playing Beethoven and they're not doing a good job playing Beethoven, I don't think to myself, wow, Beethoven sucks. Well, I think you suck, right? But I don't judge Beethoven, right? And if someone isn't playing Jesus very well, we don't say Jesus is bad. We just say that person is bad, right? He's not doing a very good Jesus. And that person could be a servant or a parent or a priest or a bishop or whatever, right? But you say you're not doing a very good Jesus. But I don't judge Jesus. I judge the person, right? And I can say that person isn't great. Well, I shouldn't judge anyway, but, And then the other thing that I want to talk about today is some people are following maybe the wrong image of who Christ is, right? And this, I think, is more relevant to our situation, right? Why is that? Because culture always infiltrates religion. Any place you go to Greece, they practice their Christianity very Greek, right? You go to Russia, it's Russian. You go to Syria, it's Syrian. You go to Egypt, it's Egyptian. Go to America, it's American, okay? And so in every place, the culture and the religion mix. And that's okay, right? That's normal, okay? Lots of ethnic traditions make their way into the religion, right? You go to Africa, you go to a Coptic Orthodox church in Africa, they got drums, they're dancing, right? It's very African, okay? And that's understandable, and that's okay, right? And that's kind of what we expect religion to do. Hey, guys. But then, now we have a seismic shift in the church, right? So what's happening now is that the Coptic church evolved and grew up in Egypt, okay? Making it what? Very Egyptian. No, David, don't offer burgers. Whoever comes late, in filu, right? So, Bastian, it's very nice of you to have that thought. You're a sweet boy. You're a good boy, Habibi. Such a good boy. It's so distracting, and so I'm just watching you. The talk is off. We've spent 2 minutes on this. What's going on? So, I'm just kidding. I'm really not that big of a jerk. I try to be as big of a jerk as I can. What are we talking about? So the Coptic church, right, the Orthodox church in Egypt, right, evolved in Egypt, right, and it took on the characteristics of Egypt, right. In fact, some of the things we talk about is like the hymnology of the Coptic church is very pharaonic. You heard like Golgotha and Ibn Faraihi have pharaonic roots in them, right. So when Christianity came to Egypt, right, it adopted characteristics of the country and the culture and the thinking, right? And it baptized them, right? So you took Egyptian practices and you made them part of the religion, okay? And that's great. That's normal, right? That's what you would expect the Christians to do. Everywhere Christians went in the early church, they went to different countries and they said, well, how do you guys do your thing? And we're just going to kind of baptize your practices and we're going to merge the two together. Okay? And that works great, right? And so the Coptic church has evolved in Egypt for thousands of years, okay? And part of the Egyptian culture, of course, changes, right? Egypt changed in the 7th, 8th century, right? How did it change in the 7th and 8th century? It became Muslim, okay? And the church had to adapt to that difference in culture. And you can imagine the culture changes as the religion changes, right? So now Egypt, which was predominantly Christian, became predominantly Muslim. And now the Muslim religion, of course, influences culture in Egypt, right? And I'm sure as you're thinking now, you can see that the Muslim culture influences the people of Egypt, right? And since that's now the culture, I have to assume that the Muslim culture and the Islamic culture and the Arab culture is going to infiltrate and change the church, right? And the way the church practices, because the church is now operating in this Muslim world, right? The people growing up, the priests, the bishops, the deacons, the Sunday school teachers, the parents, they're growing up in a Muslim world, right? I mean, half of your parents studied Quran in grade school, okay? So their friends were Muslim, they went to Muslim schools, everything around them is Muslim, all their friends are, everything's Muslim, okay? The culture is Muslim. And so that starts to affect Christianity. Now, that's okay in Egypt, right? Because if I go to the church and I hear something that's kind of Arab and Muslim and kind of like that feel, right? I'm like, okay, well, then I leave church and I go out of my work or my school and everyone's saying the same stuff. I'm like, okay, this works, right? This doesn't sound weird to me. The problem becomes, right, now we have this shift. All of a sudden I take this very cultural Arab-based church, and I just planted in America over like a 5-year period. In fact, a 1-day period, right? I get on the plane, I show up, and I'm bringing all that 1,000 years of Islam to America. And I said, now we're going to do it just like we did in Egypt. What's going to happen? Well, now we got a culture clash, right? Because the culture that I'm coming from is not the same as the culture I'm in, right? So I want to point out some of the things that are going on that's possibly creating these issues, right? So what could be happening is I'm in the church and I'm hearing things, but maybe those things aren't really Christianity. Maybe they're cultural, right? And we can, it's an impressive back crack. Dang, I heard it from here. Do you guys hear it? It's pretty good. So I want to talk about this idea of Islam, of the influence of culture, possibly Islamic culture, into the practice of the church, right? And I don't mean the church itself, but more I mean about the way the people practice Christianity. And I want to point out some things, and you may disagree with me. I'm just test driving this talk on you guys. I typed it this morning, okay? I've been working on this for 5 years up here, but I typed it this morning just special for you guys, right? Why is this important? Well, the first reason is it's destructive to current youth's spiritual lives, right? Because if I go into the church and someone tells me this is spirituality, and I go, I don't think so. I don't think this makes any sense. This doesn't feel right, right? And the reason it doesn't feel right because you're telling me something that's very cultural, right? And maybe it works in the church, but then I leave the church and nothing in the culture talks like this or thinks like this. And all of a sudden I can have this comparison. I can say, this doesn't sound like it makes a lot of sense, right? This sounds like it's a very ethnic thing, but I don't find this in the Bible. I don't find this in the church fathers. I don't find this in the apostolic writings. I don't really find this in anything Christian. I just find this in mom, okay? And mom is saying, la, this is religion, right? And now I have a problem, okay? Next thing is it's destructive to those coming from these cultures. Now, why is that? Because I may be practicing what I think is Christianity, but it's not. I may be practicing what I think is religion, but it's not, right? I mean, my mom told me very clearly it is haram for a ship to be upside down. God is upset by that. Now, that's ridiculous, right? Do you? You know it's ridiculous that a ship that's upside down upsets God? Yeah. Okay, right? We can make something up that's lunacy, but we know it's lunacy, right? God doesn't care that a ship is upside down. That's completely cultural. Now, she taught me that this is what Jesus said, okay? And then I looked it up. I didn't find anything about that when I read the Gospels. I looked up the church fathers. I looked up the writings of the fathers, the monks, Athanasius. No one talked about ships being upside down. And nothing that even related to a ship being upside down. And then you realize, this has nothing to do with anything. This is cultural, right? But she sold it to me like it's haram, which of course is another word that we know is not Christian, right? In Christianity, there is no haram and halal. These are Muslim words, right? That our parents will often use to describe religious things. We don't have haram. We don't have this concept in our church. There's nothing that is haram. You look shocked with your back that's all jacked up, okay? And so now these differences become far more apparent when I move to a different country, right? So now I relocate, and I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Haram? What's going on? What's happening? Right? None of this really fits, okay? And all of a sudden, what I want to do as a youth is say what? You know what? All this stuff is bogus. You and your church are bogus, right? Because there's nothing in the Bible that says anything about shibshibs being upside down, okay? So, yeah, you walked in on a good talk, right? So I think all of this is just made up baloney. So now what do I do as a youth, right? I take all of it and I throw it all out, right? I say, all this is just bunk, right? Well, it's not all bunk. The shib part is bunk, right? But the rest of it's pretty good, okay? But the whole package, because in some of our parents' brains, right, it's a package. You throw out, the shib and the Eucharist are the same, right? Those two are equivalent, Okay. One of the youth made this comment to me, and he used to be, I call a superstar deacon. He was disgruntled after he became a superstar deacon. He turned 24, 25, he realized, oh, this is just superficial and shallow, and I was just trying to show off, and I was just trying to hog the mic, and there was no spiritual life in being a superstar deacon. And he's basically left the church. He said to me that he met someone who was Christian, and he told, an Orthodox person, and he said, oh, I'm Egyptian. He told this person, I'm Egyptian. And the person responded, oh, are you a Coptic Muslim or a Muslim Muslim? You get what I'm saying? Right? So basically, this other Orthodox person was saying, a lot of the Coptic Orthodox people act Muslim. Right? Now, if you're in Egypt, you're like, no, we don't. We act normal. Yeah, but guess what normal is? Muslim. Right? And so you can't tell what's what. And then all of a sudden you come up to America and you can kind of hold it up to the light a little bit. And you can kind of say, well, what part of this is cultural, which is fine in Egypt. I mean, I'm not saying it's wrong. Keep doing it. Knock yourself out, right? What part of this is ul-es and ghatas, right? And balah and nairuz, right? And we can come up with spiritual meanings for why balah, dates and the nairuz are linked, right? But we know the real reason is that dates sprout in September, right? And so we happen to have a feast that's in September, Nowruz, so we're like, of course, dates and the New Year are related. Are they? No, right? Not religiously. In Egypt they are. Ethnically, they're wonderful, right? It's a cool little meditation. It's cute. It's nice, right? But it's not religion. Right? It's not the core of the religion. It's the ethnic part of it's the cultural part of the religion. Make sense? So one thing that's different, and I sort of want to kind of point out some of these influences, is the direction of righteousness. And this is something I think we've inherited from our culture, possibly from a different religion. Does a good person fast, or does fasting make you good? What's the difference, right? Do good people fast? Sure. We got lots of stories of monks, they all fast. Does fasting make you good? Answer, no. No, it does not, right? That doesn't make me good, right? God's not evaluating how long I fasted or what is fasting. We'll get to it in a little bit, right? Fasting is a whole thing, very little to do with food, right? It's fasting is exercise, right? It's disciplining myself so that I can then work and do the real Christian work of being a nice person when someone's mean to me. That's the real Christian work, right? The fasting itself doesn't make me good, right? Breaking the fast isn't like, well, that's the sin. You broke the fast. That's not the sin. It's a spiritual discipline, right? And if I don't want to do it, then I just don't get disciplined, right? It's like, you take a 1 pound dumbbell and you do curls, right? Well, you're just not getting any stronger, okay? But it's not like not doing a curl is a sin. It's just not working. Does that make sense? Does a good person confess? Yes. Does confession make you good? No. Confession helps us to understand and feels God's love so that you can show love to other people. So what's confession about? When I feel God forgives me, then I understand who God is, and I can forgive other people, right? Because you can't forgive if you haven't been forgiven. You can't love if you haven't been loved. You can't have compassion if no one's had compassion on you. So the reason I confess isn't because I need to go debits and credits and check off the list. And, if I remove enough sins and I do enough good things, maybe this God, when he does his math and he's an accountant, he'll figure it out. He'll say, okay, I think you got in because you have, 37,000 good things and 39,000 bad things, but you confessed 2,000 of them. So I think the math this is what we do, right? It's ridiculous. But that's how we think of God, right? He's an accountant, debits and credits, goods and bads. And I take confession, I remove some bads, and then hopefully I have enough goods to win and get in, because that's really all I want. Make sense? Is this Christianity? Am I describing Christianity? I am not. Does a good person take communion? Absolutely. Is communion what makes me good? Kind of. It helps me. Now, is God counting the number of times I come and says, all right, well, he came 6 times this month, and that's pretty good, and maybe I'll give him an A in organic chemistry because he came to liturgy like the day before the liturgy, or the day before his final exam, which is, that's the most important day to show up to liturgy, right, is the day before the final exam. You show up 3 days before, it doesn't count. A day before, then you get an A. 2 days, B. Is that right? No, it's not. I'm kidding. Okay, so communion makes me feel God's Spirit and helps me become his image and his likeness. And that way I can become an image and likeness of God to others and serve them. So this is me taking on his image, and then I can serve other people the way God serves me. Does a good person read the Bible? Oh, that should be yes, right? But does reading the Bible make you good? No. It's not some chore. It's not like God's counting the number of verses you read and said, well, they read their chapter a night. Check. Give it to him. Right? This is the word of God. This is talking about the person I love. Right? This is, I want to learn about this guy. I want to know who he is. I want to know how he affects me. Right? I want to understand him. Right? This isn't some duty I do, and if I do a bunch of things, God's like, you're doing a great job. Here's some points for you. Right? And I don't need to read I got to read 27 verses a day and that's my number. Read one. Read one and think about it and meditate on it and pray about it and live it. You don't have to read the chapter. You don't have to read 5 chapters. You don't have to read some set number so that you feel good about yourself. Right? And certainly God isn't counting and saying, well, I'm going to give him points for reading. Okay. This is a gift, right? Reading the word and finding out who this light is and how he entered the world and what he did for us, right? Hearing the words of Christ and how he acted is understanding who my dad is. And I want to know who my dad is, right? This isn't about counting the number of chapters I read. So some people say that church is where you come. Oops, right? So think about what church is, right? We say that church is a hospital. Right? So this is another kind of cultural thing that I think I find sometimes. We say that church is a hospital, right? Church is a place I come for when I'm broken, when I'm sick, when I'm sinful. And every once in a while, we think of ourselves, no, I want to hide my sinfulness and my shamefulness from everybody. I want to show that I'm actually a good person. I want to have good appearances. I want everyone to think good of me. Right? In fact, sometimes we hear this. I'm easily distracted. Sometimes we hear this, right, when your parents say stuff like, "Nas hayulu alena," right? What are people going to say about us? This extreme concern about what people think. And so what happens is I go to church, and instead of exposing my sins and hiding my talents, which is what Christianity calls us to do and the Bible tells us to do, we do the opposite, right? What do? We go and we expose our talents and we tell everyone, hey, look at all the things I can do. And we hide our sins. Right? In fact, some people go so far as to say church is a place to show off your talents. Is it? Has anyone read that anywhere? Did Jesus say anything like that? Did the fathers say, go to church and show off your talents? I don't know where that came from. Right? It's not Christian. And this doesn't build community. Right? Because all of you go to church and you're hiding yourself from everyone at church because you know they're going to, or you feel like they're going to judge you. I don't want to expose myself. So now the community becomes shallow. The friendships become superficial, right? I don't really open up to anyone at church because I know in a moment they're going to go tell their mom and their mom's going to tell everyone on earth, right? So I'm not about to take that chance. I'm not going to even tell my friend what happened because he's going to go talk to his dad or his mom. Right? And then I'm embarrassed. I'm shunned in front of the community. So I'll go talk to my friend at school because they'll get me. They won't tell everybody. They won't judge me. Right? And so what this now creates is a community, a shallow community. And we want community. Right? The Greek word of koinonia means community, but it's a deep community. We're bound in Christ and we're bound together. And that's what we look for. We want people to love us the way we are. And to be and to love and to be loved, right? And so when we get this shallow place where everyone's worried about appearances and how do I look and who's talking to who, all of a sudden our friendships aren't very deep, right? And I wish we could come inside the church and open up. I wish we could do what the early church did, which is like public confessions. Could you even imagine a public confession now? Most people shudder at the thought, right? But believe me, I've been in meetings that are public confessions. I've been at men's meetings where all the guys open up and say, yeah, this is where I'm broken. This is where I'm messing up. This is where I'm not a good husband. This is where I'm not a good father. Right? And in fact, if you look at the model of an AA meeting or a 12-step program, what is that? Public confession, isn't it? Everyone sits in a circle, says, hi, I'm an alcoholic. Hi, Bob. I'm an alcoholic too. Right? And we're all sinners, we're all broken, and no one's judging anybody. Right? That's the model of the early church. That's the way it should be. Right? But our culture is a culture of appearances. It's all about looks and what people think and whoever these people are, I really don't care. When my mom used to say that to me, I'd lose my mind. She says, what are people going to say? I would say, I don't care what anyone thinks. And I would let her have it. All right. Next thing. Mechanical adherence to rituals. There's an Instagram video. I'm probably going to get in trouble just for showing these things. I don't know. Will the sound come through? Let's see. No internet. Okay, good. So this is a little sermon that someone sent me. It's a priest.
We can sign you in if you want.
I'd rather not. I think I'll get in trouble for showing it. But it's a priest. You guys understand Arabic? All right, sign me in. Yallah. All right, I'll skip to the next one. Sign me in, go ahead. Oh, you need to log out and stuff?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
So actually,
That's okay.
Can I ask
Yes, you can ask a question.
Because I know the title here is like mechanical, like going through the motions, and I know earlier you were talking about like reading the Bible, like and checking it off your calendar. But sometimes it's really hard because that's where you're at. Like you can't muster enough strength, or you can't muster enough attention or time or whatever to really fully sit down and deep think about one verse. Because you don't want to let yourself go. You don't want to just admit that, like, oh, it doesn't matter if I read just for a chore anyways, so I just won't. So how do you deal with that?
That's a very good question. So David had a really good question, right? He said, well, sometimes I put myself on a program, right, because I don't want to read the Bible. So I force myself to read. Is that kind of what you're saying? Like a disciplining mechanism?
Yes, it's like I'm very well aware that it's just I'm going through the motions.
Sure. So the exact same thing, say, I want to start working out, right? If I wait until I want to work out, I'm not going to work out, right? So I have to say to myself, look, every day, 8 o'clock, my friend shows up, we make a commitment, you show up at my house, we go at 8, we go to the gym, right? And it's kind of a commitment mechanism, right? You have to come, 8, let's do it, right? And of course, 7:30 rolls around and you're pissed off that you made this deal the night before, but hey, he's coming and I'm going to go, right? So that's a commitment, right? And that kind of discipline is important, right? So I could say to myself, look, I'm going to push myself every day at 7 p.m. I'm going to read something, okay? That's not what I'm talking about. That's actually a really good idea, right? Because none of us are disciplined, right? So sometimes you have to kind of push yourself and have a little, app that reminds you on your phone that says, time to read, okay? That's what I'm saying. What I'm saying is I then mistake that for righteousness. I read. I'm good. You didn't read? You're bad. I'm better than you, right? I read whatever and you haven't, right? And so I read, this discipline is something that gets me to read, but now I'm reading because I want to learn about my dad and I want to have a relationship with God. That's the thing, right? Not the reading. Makes sense? That's the difference. All right, so I want to show you this video. Someone sent it to me. Hopefully the sound comes through. Do you know how to get sound?
Can you scroll down a little bit? Yeah. On the sound.
مش هي دي اللي انا عايزها. بنعمل ايه بقى ساعتها؟
Okay, so he just said, when the deacon says, worship God in fear and trembling, what do we do? Everyone sits down. Okay? Now I want you to watch the sermon. I want you to look at the way he's talking.
تعملوا ايه؟ الاقي الكنيسه كلها راحت قاعده.
He's
يا عم
angry.
الشماس قال اسجدوا مش اجلسوا. وبيقول ايه؟ بيقول اسجدوا لله مش اسجدوا وخلاص. اصل هو بعد كده ساعات يقول ايه؟ احنوا رؤوسكم ويسكت. المره دي بيقول لك ايه؟ بيقول لك اسجدوا لله بخوف ورعده. تلاقي كل الكنيسه راحت قاعده وراسها على الدكه اللي قدامها وزي الفل. ايه يا عم ده؟ ده الروح القدس بيحل. احنا بنعمل ايه؟ بنقعد.
Okay, so for those of you who I need to translate. How many people don't understand? Probably several of you, right? So he's basically saying is when the deacon says worship God in fear and trembling, people sit down, right? And he says how could you sit down? He's saying worship God in fear and trembling. You're supposed to be in fear and trembling, and you're sitting down.
في اللي اقوله ويسامحني سيدنا لما بيخش من الكنيسه كلنا بنعمل ايه؟ بنقف. طب المسيح اللي بيحل ده نقعد. ايه ده؟ عادات غريبه جدا بنعملها في الكنيسه صح؟ الشماس يقول لك حاجتين لفظين في القداس. مره يقول اسكتوا ومره يقول احنوا.
Okay. I have trouble watching that. All right, so what are your thoughts about that sermon? The music is nice in the background, little stars. What do you think? So, my reaction, the whole talk is about sitting versus bowing. What's he talking about? A ritual. Did he mention the word Jesus? Did he mention a relationship with God? Did he mention love your neighbor? Did he mention peace? He said, how dare you sit? You should bow. And he focused his whole sermon on a ritual with no spirituality attached. Okay? And then, of course, we all realize there's pews in the church, so you can't bow anyway, right? So I don't know how you're supposed to bow. Maybe the person on the end can bow. You can step out and bow in the aisle. But how's everyone else supposed to bow? You can't. There's a pew in front of you, right? It's unless you can scrunch in that little area, okay? And does a loving God really care as much as he's making it out to be? So if I'm listening to this, who do I think God is? He's pretty angry. You see how angry he was? And what was his approach? Guilt, shame, attacking the people, right? He made you feel bad about sitting. I come out of a sermon like this, am I uplifted about the God who loves me and died for me? No, I feel bad because I sit instead of bow. Did you talk about my heart? He's talking about my feelings. He's talking about my love for God. He's just talking about how you look on the outside. He's using shame and guilt to attack his own congregation. And then people, unfortunately, may erroneously think that bowing is a form of righteousness. I mean, I could see someone bowing and going, yeah, I'm good. I'm killing it. I bowed. I actually bowed down. And then better, I'm going to look back up at the people who aren't bowing, and what am I going to do?
Remember their names.
I'm going to remember their names in hell, right? I'm going to judge them. I'm going to say, I'm bowing. Why aren't you bowing? What's wrong with you? And I'm going to judge them because you know what? Abuna judged them. Abuna told me to judge them. Abuna said, you're allowed to. That's wrong what they're doing. How dare they? Right? So you come out of something like this and you're fired up. I'm ready to hate people. I'm ready to watch people who mess up. I'm ready to look for anybody who does something wrong. Christian? Anything I said sound Christian to you? Right? But this is an approach. And maybe this approach works in an Islamic culture, in an Arab culture. This approach puts me off. And I'll caveat something. I grew up in a church that actually, when the deacon said, bow your heads, we only bowed our heads. And we always prostrated. Right? So I come from this world. I agree with him that you should prostrate when the deacon says prostrate. But I would never, but I listen to this and I got, my blood boils. Like, what, were you just going to attack me because I'm sitting? There's a pew here. Yeah.
What I kind of got from that, though, was like when he says worship God in fear and trembling, we're going to just put our head down and like nap.
Oh, sure. And that's fine, right? There's a much better way of making that point, right? And the way you don't nap, right, isn't by saying, let's force the exterior, right? Because you know what? I can nap bowing too. In fact, I have, right? So, I look really holy doing it. You should see me. I kill it, right? And they're like, dang, Archie's really in deep prayer. He's asleep. He had a long night, okay? So what's going on, right, we're just focused on the outside appearances, right? We want to make it look good on the outside. You know, if you want me to not nap, then you put fire in my heart, and you can't stop me from praying. That's the right way to do it, right? But that focus on the outside, you know, and one of the things about America, for all its faults, it's very true, right? Hey, I don't feel like doing it. I'm not going to do it. I don't care what anyone thinks, right? Americans aren't worried about appearances, right? They're very transparent, and they're very like, hey, I don't think that makes sense. I'm not going to be fake. This is me. This is who I am. It's a beautiful thing, actually, right? And we come from a culture that's very much not like that. Whoever you are is not good enough. Hide it. God doesn't love that guy, right? Neither do the people at church, you know? Does that make sense? Do you guys disagree with me? Argue? Feel free to argue. Yes?
Another perspective that I saw, I kind of had the same perspective too as you, but another thing is that I think it's talking maybe more about respect. I don't know if that's correct, but I feel like when he compared, I think it was the Pope or the Bishop, like walking into the church, we stand up out of respect. That like when they say worship God, we sit down. So I don't know what his intention was, but it could also be like about respect, like show more respect to when we say worship God.
And that's absolutely true, right? But the way that the sermon came across, it was about, did he say sit or did he say worship? He said worship, right? So, I agree that that's what he should be saying, right? And maybe in that culture, I can get that from that, right? And some of you are Egyptian enough that you can say, yeah, no, but I know what he means, right? But some of you are American enough to say, this is triggering, right? This is PTSDing me from when I was a kid and our priest used to yell at us because, the boy had long hair, right? So, and that's the difference, right? So, I can see what he's trying to say, right? But I can also see that this doesn't work anymore, right? Make sense? What do you think, Beck guy? All right. Excessive focus on outward appearance. We kind of talked about this. What will people say? Mechanical church attendance. Now remember, and I'm going to go out on a limb here, right? Sometimes we're just told to come to church. Just come, right? But my heart's not in it, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, just come. And maybe that's a good thing, right? Because maybe you'll hear a message that'll inspire you. Maybe you'll meet a servant who'll move you, right? And the church is a place to go and figure out what's wrong. But don't swap that with, I'm good because I came to church, right? That's not righteousness. Righteousness is found in finding Christ at church, not the number of times I come to church. Does that make sense? Like one guy, one time, he was telling me, he's like, yeah, for Saba Arba, for Kiak, the month of Kiak, I went every single Saba Arba, and I stayed the whole night. And he's telling me he wants to impress me. And I'm like, I don't care. Like what? You think you're good because you did that? Like now, if you went and you felt the praises of the Nativity and you felt Christ's love for mankind in being incarnated, that's wonderful. But if you think you counted number of hours and God counted the number of hours and said, yeah, you're doing great, bro, I think you have the wrong Jesus, right? In fact, nothing Christ ever said was count the number of hours and the most hours wins, right? And every once in a while we get in that kind of game, Some people will come up and go, let me tell you how long our Good Friday was. Oh yeah? Ours was longer. I mean, where's this coming from? Right? Yes?
How to avoid falling feeling that you're righteous, but
So-
at the same time, not killing your self-esteem.
Yeah. So that's the that's the perfect hardest place to be, and it's kind of the expression is a knife edge, right? It's like standing on a knife edge, and you don't want to fall on either side, right? And so the question kind of comes back to, are you a saint or are you a sinner? Which are you? You're both, right? Are you just dust? Or are you the temple of the Holy Spirit? You're both, right? And I'm the temple of the Holy Spirit because God made me the temple of the Holy Spirit. But me, I'm dust. Me, I'm a sinner, right? And so what happens is, and I think this is what happens, is because our culture has moved into this world where we say, well, look, we're not supposed to be bad, right? We're supposed to, all pretend we're good, right? And this goes to the servants, clergy, whatever, right? We all have to not be bad. We all have to pretend we're good people, right? I have to pretend I'm good in front of all of you, right? So how do I maintain that? How do I maintain that appearance that I'm a good person when I know I'm not? Well, I have to lower the bar as to what good is, right? So what's good? Well, I fast Wednesdays and Fridays. I'm good. I come to church early. I'm good, right? I read this many chapters in the Bible. I'm good, right? So what I do is I make good easier, right? I eat tameya during 55 days of the year. I'm good, right? Now, are you going to forgive your neighbor? No, I'm not going to forgive him. He's a piece of He's a piece of garbage. I'm not going to forgive that jerk, right? I'm not going to love him, but I'll eat tameya, right? And I won't break the fast. So what am I doing? I'm taking the easy way out. I'll come to church early, but I'll never love her again, right? And I'll fast Wednesdays and Fridays, but I'm never speaking to my cousin. What are we doing, right? So what I'm doing is I'm replacing the real work of a Christian, the hard stuff, with the easy stuff. If you come before the gospel, you're okay. Okay, good. All right, so I'm good now. So the feelings of righteousness come because I've lowered the bar to the point where if you show up at this time, you're good. I'm like, okay, well then I'm good then. I don't break. I don't kill anybody. And I have these lines, right? But then when I start poking as to what real Christianity is, it's actually very, very hard to do. Right? We can all think of that person that stabbed us in the back, who talked about us, who gossiped about us, who hated us. Now go love them. Harder. Right? So I'd rather have tameya. Much easier. Make sense? So how do I lose the feeling of righteousness? I have to think about what the real bar is. Not, did I go to church? Did I, blah, blah, blah. Right? Another thing that comes from yes?
So let's say you can ever did you wrong, how can we like not feel like prideful or like, oh, I did that, so I'm good, or like, I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, if you can forgive someone, go ahead, feel prideful about it. I can't. I don't forgive people very easily. And I've never reached the point where I've forgiven them to such a point that I can feel prideful about it. Like, I'm just like, okay, fine, I won't kill you. Right? I won't hate you. But if you can forgive them, knock yourself out. That's better. Shaming other people for their sins. This is something I see in our churches a lot, right? Especially when the baby's crying in the back and all the tunts give them that look, the death stare. Shh, shh, right? All of this stuff that we see, right? And, you know, the shh is louder than the baby, right? And you're just like, you know, I have to tell you guys a story. So I have 3 kids, right? I have 3 kids that are 3.5 years apart from top to bottom, okay? So you can imagine what church was like for us when I was, you know. So I was at church once with my wife and our 3 kids, right? 2 strollers, baby, okay? And my oldest is 4.5 years old, okay? And the youngest is 1, right? No, not even. It was maybe 6 months. So 4 to 6 months. And I have 3 kids. And the whole liturgy, we are just doing everything we can. Like one kid's crying and one kid's a bottle and this one needs food and this one's getting crackers and this one's got a poopy diaper and this is all we're doing for an hour and a half of this. And we're in the back of the church, right? So imagine like this is, imagine that the church is over here, there's a door here, and then there's like a foyer here, like the kind of the entryway. And then on the other side of that door over there is the street, okay? So I'm at the back door, and the door's open. We're in Southern California, right? Door's open. If I go like this, I'm in the street. Okay, so I'm as far back as I can be in this church, right? And we're just doing all this stuff, and this lady's there. She's like 50. And she's standing in the back in this back area with us. And I don't know why she's back there. And the church is kind of empty. There's space. And Justin makes a sound. She goes, ah! He just makes a sound. And she turns around and gives me a death stare, right? And I don't know, you know, you guys seen Shrek, like Donkey on the Edge, right? Donkey on the Edge, right? So after you've been doing this for an hour and a half, you're done, right? And then this lady turns around and gives me the death stare. I'm not proud of this, but I am. I walk up to her, I get in her face, like this close to her face, and I said, turn around, don't look at me again. And she's like, okay. You know that look when a dad's just about ready to snap. When you're right there, you're right about ready to snap, you know? And I almost took her out, right? So had she turned around again. So anyway, this is the kind of, welcome everybody. There's plenty of room in the front. This guy's handicapped. You guys should have a handicap chair for him or something.
So we'll invest in a wheelchair.
All right, so one of the things that we find in Arab culture, Islamic culture, is the ability to shame other people. In fact, the Quran calls them to shame and attack other people. If a woman is scantily dressed and not appropriately dressed, it's okay to shame her, attack her, hit her, kill her, right? If she isn't dressed appropriately, right? And sometimes I feel like this has made its way into the church, right? Because someone does something in the church or someone isn't dressed right, and everyone feels very entitled, very, very, very entitled to tell you you are wrong and you are bad and you're inappropriate. And they want to defend God, right? They're in the God-defending business, okay? And I don't know where this comes from, but once again, it's not very Christian. It's not very nice. And I can't tell you how many stories I have of people who have struggled to come to church, priests, servants, work with these people for 6 months trying to get them, please come to the church just once, attend the liturgy. The girl finally shows up, right? And because her dress isn't here, it's here, the tant shows up and gives her kilmitin, right? And lets her have it. Yes?
This wasn't at a church, but it was like a Christian family. It's the same thing. I was going to give like my condolences for a funeral with a family full of people that were supposed to be sad about the person departed. And I was wearing like a black dress right above my knee, but it was long sleeve and everything. and I got like 3 comments that day by the people of the family. Instead of seeing them like doing my condolences, I was like,
Yeah. And like this is so off-putting, right? This so turns you off. And especially if this comes from a servant or a clergy or someone in the church, it's like, this is what you're going to focus on. This is what matters, right? Not that I'm here, not my heart, not my love for you guys. It's sad and it's frustrating to see. I would be frustrated too, as you can tell. Let's skip politics, because that's just going to open up a can of worms. Huh?
Can eat worms.
But a pish. Let's talk about fasting very quickly. So sometimes we also see in fasting this strict adherence to rules, right? You've all seen this, right? They read the ingredients. If the 9th ingredient is whatever, that's out, right? And the problem with this comes back to the point I made to you earlier. What's your name? Yes. Gouda? Tuta. Okay. Gouda is a cheese. Tuta is a nice thing. All right, so the point I made to Tuta, which is the problem is like when fasting gets reduced, I was actually just talking to Sayyidina like 2 days ago about this, and we're talking about fasts. And the problem is when fasting gets reduced to something silly, right? Then it's not appealing, right? So when all of fasting is, your mom says, I'm going to make kunefa without butter, right? That's it. And now I have kunefa without butter. And you're like, really? That's it? So God's about the butter? So, God's happy if I don't have butter, but God's upset if I have butter. Right? I've reduced God, infinity, to that. Right? Now that's silly. Okay? And when I've taken fasting and I've made this very strict adherence, now what happens? Down to Tuta's point, I didn't have butter. What am I? I'm a good person. I'm killing it. 55 days, no butter. See how good I am? Right? And that's a low bar. Right? That's easy to do. That's easy to do. What's hard to do is real Christianity. Real love. Real forgiveness. Real empathy. Real compassion. That's hard. No butter? No problem. Right? And so when we reduce these fasts to these things and these rules that we love the rules, is it 9 hours? Okay. Oh yeah, I didn't eat within the 9 hours. It's fine. That's a discipline of the church, and it makes you appreciate the communion a little bit more, and it makes you realize, that the first thing that enters your stomach is the communion of the body, and you don't have like a bunch of food in your mouth when you take communion. That's nice. It doesn't make you good. Right? And when you see people looking at their clock, they, oh man, I'm 2 minutes off from the 9 hours. Darn. What is that? Is that Christianity? I'll tell you guys a story. My driver, when I was in Egypt, I lived in Egypt for 6 months a few years ago. My driver is a Muslim guy, and he was telling me that during Ramadan, he has trouble drinking enough water. His body just has a lot of salt, and he needs more water. So as the metfa is going off, you guys know the metfa is like this, the horn, trumpet, whatever, to start fasting again, he starts guzzling water right before it goes off. And then the metfa goes off, and apparently it goes off several times. Like there's a few of them, right? A few warning shots first, I guess. So he's drinking water, and he says his family sees him drinking water. They come running across the room and knock the bottle off his face. Right? Why? Because in their world, their God, not mine, is really angry that he was drinking water. Okay? And then you think to yourself, that's crazy talk, until someone says, don't brush your teeth before communion. Why? Some water can get in. And you're like, gee, where'd you get that from? Which religion? I'll give you 2 guesses, but you only need one. Right? Where is that coming from? It's not Christianity. Right? So these cultural things are influencing us. Okay? And we just have to figure them out and call them out. Right? And just say, this was great and this was nice, but it's not the real deal. Okay? Let's focus on what matters, on what's important. One of my other favorites, jinx. Hasad. You guys know this one? right? So what happens when you walk and you stub your toe? What does your mom say? It's because she's jealous of you and hey hasadidak, and that's why someone is jinxing you right now. بحد بيحسدك. You guys heard this? All right? How many people raise your hand if you've heard this stuff? Right? Oh, it's okay. Right? And I'm like looking at my mom like, or maybe I wasn't paying attention and I stubbed my toe. Right? That's the other. He's jealous of you and he jinxed you. He hasadak. Hasadak, whatever, right? Now, of course, this is unverifiable and unprovable, right? But it makes sense. I'm like, yeah, he is jealous of me. Yeah, he doesn't like me. Yeah, he probably did jinx me. And then I hate him. Winner, right? Now, where is this anywhere in Christianity? Where is this in the Fathers? Where is this in anything? Right? This is like the ship upside down. Same thing, right? Same level, right? And in fact, I met a girl like a month ago, and she was talking to me about being jealous and judgment and stuff. And she goes, and she wants to give a Sunday school lesson. So she said, you have any verse? I tell her some stuff, right? And then she goes, so what about the hased and the threes in the threes? And I'm like, hased in threes? So she said, hased comes in threes. It comes in 3 hits. And if once the first hit comes, if someone bihsidak, the 2 more hits come after it. And I just looked at her, I go, yeah, but if you wear a garlic around your neck, it doesn't happen that way, right? And she goes, really? And I go, no, this is all garbage. You're making a... And she was about to go give a Sunday school class. She's 21, goes to UCI. She's about to give a Sunday school lesson to the kids talking about all this. And I go, no, this is all bogus. This is just junk monkey stuff. And then she says that when she was a freshman in high school, she got very severely depressed because this girl she didn't like got kidney stones. And she was like, I was positive I did that. I gave her the kidney stones by ihsiding her. And she was so depressed that she couldn't even confess to her confession father. She was so embarrassed and ashamed of what she had done that she couldn't tell anybody. She's like, for months, I was depressed and anxious about what I did, right? And you kind of see the fruit of this stuff. Right? It's just monkey town. Attitude towards women. Islam does not give women full rights. Amen. Right? Also, you can't, a woman, I think it takes 4 women to testify against 1 man in court, something like that. Inheritances are like half or a third for you have a boy and a girl. They don't get 50-50. No. Guy gets triple what the girl gets, stuff like that, right? So we come from a country where that's the norm, right? And where, unfortunately, our parents grew up and think, okay, that's the way it works, right? And that's okay, right? So when I come to the family, my husband, and my husband treats me like garbage, I think, okay, everyone treats me like garbage. I live in Egypt. I'm a woman, right? That's how I live. I go to work, I get treated like garbage. I go to school, I get treated like garbage. Everyone treats me like garbage. Okay? That's fine. And now I come to America, and then you treat me like garbage. I'm like, wait a minute. I don't think I'm supposed to be treated like garbage. I think I'm equal. In fact, I think that's what Christianity says. The 2 of us are same in the eyes of God. You're not better than me in the eyes of God, it turns out. Right? And so now, all of a sudden, that starts to really affect us. And that's one big thing that's affecting us, especially in the church. Lots of little things. Right? Lots of positions that go to men, lots of opinions that go to men, right? Lots of approaches where men are dominant and women are just submissive, okay? And I know I mentioned this before, maybe here, right? But I think a lot of times even, you read the wedding ceremony, a lot of girls are just livid. Like, I want this read at my wedding, okay? Why is that? Because when I hear the deacon say you should submit to your husband, oftentimes what does the girl think about? What her dad did to her mom, right? And I'm not interested in that. I don't want what my dad did to my mom. I don't like that, right? And I'm not going into that kind of relationship, right? And so actually we find here that a lot of girls are like crazy feminist, right? Like, hell no, right? I am absolutely, and you're like, whoa. What happened? Oh, it turns out dad was abusive. Verbally, physically, whatever, emotionally, and she's traumatized, right? And she's like, so she sees any guy pull any kind of crap, and she's like, oh no, this isn't happening, right? And unfortunately, the guys watched their dads and they learned how to be men. Islamic men. Good, solid Islamic men. Some of you, right? You watched your dads treat your moms like garbage, insist on everything done. They don't do a thing. I don't lift a finger. I shouldn't have to help in the house. I shouldn't have to blah, blah, blah. What is that? It's cultural. It's not Christian, right? And they assume that as, hey, I followed the traditions of our forefathers, of Jesus, who said that I shouldn't help around the house and I shouldn't clean, I should do jack. I should sit around and be served. What is that? It's not Christianity. So this is a statue of an ancient Egyptian statue, and it says, women in ancient Egypt were revered as superior and more sacred than men. Being considered the source of life and wisdom, it was believed that a man who attained great knowledge, spirituality, and power could earn the right to wear a long-haired wig, which symbolizes his attainment of a level equal to that of a woman. The woman was seen as a source of strength and protection for her man, and it is a saying that still circulates today that behind every successful man is a strong woman supporting him. Right? So compare that to the attitude, that's ancient Egypt. Right? Compare that to the attitude we see about women now in Egypt. Right? How they're treated and what's the difference? Well, the laws are different. The religion is different. Right? Lots of things are different. God punishes those who aren't good and rewards those who are. That somehow this is some kind of punishment for being bad and disobedient, and God will be offended by your insubordination to such a point that he's going to send you to hell forever because you didn't listen to him. Right? And that's a very different relationship than for God so loved the world that he sent his only begotten son. That's a verse. Right? Very different from some of the things we hear and some of the way things are depicted. I remember once I was in Seattle, and Palm Sunday is lasts a really long time, and this kid was outside, and the funeral service had started, which we can talk about that later when I'm not being recorded, and basically said, some parent walked up. The kid was outside. His kid's like 8. Church is 7 hours. Right? Kid's outside. Guy goes, you better get in there. If you don't get the water sprayed on you, you're going to go to hell if you die. Blah, blah, blah. And he's just telling this kid this horrible. I'm like, what are you doing? What is this? Does this sound like for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son? Right? I mean, look at what it's deteriorated to. Right? It's superstition. If you don't get water sprayed on you, then you're going to go to hell. Well, guess what? If you're a really bad person, they can spray the whole gallon of water on you. It doesn't really matter how much water they spray on you, right? Okay. I'll skip that one. Concept of power, cultural as well. Did you have a... Yes?
Yeah,
You always have good stories.
Sorry. They were talking about women and what matters and what doesn't matter in Christianity. Growing up, I was taught the whole you can't take communion if you're on your period as a girl. I feel like in my perspective, or what I just came to a conclusion of, that it was more of a cultural thing because back then you were seen impure, and it was just a cultural perspective on girls. But I see until today, girls feel like they can't take communion just because they're on their period. And sometimes I feel like anyone who's kind of has more logic to it or adds more logic to it would know God doesn't care if that's a very personal thing, or at least that's my perspective. It's a very personal thing. I think that's the last thing God will notice if you go take communion with a pure heart, and you've done what you're supposed to do, and that you're ready to take his body and blood in. And so I feel some girls just go because the Bible says that, and I feel others, I've used this excuse before where I was too lazy to wake up, and my mom would ask me, why are you not getting it? I can't take communion anyways. So
Yes.